I know many players are where I'm at right now, which is that they're suffering from a bit of Souls fatigue, and I definitely have to admit I am as well. It's not that I think Souls games are getting particularly bad or worse, but just because I've played so many of them, that kind of feeling of accomplishment has dimmed somewhat. I think when you finish so many of them, I think it just doesn't feel the same. It just becomes kind of like a checklist. You know that the next boss you're gonna have to learn the attack pattern, learn their weaknesses, find the windows, the parry windows, the damage windows, and honestly, it just becomes a bit of a I can almost tick box exercise until you kill the boss, then move on to the next boss, rinse and repeat. The kind of sense of discovery, the sense of challenge that made me fall in love with Souls games has been replaced by familiarity. That's why nowadays I'm really finding myself leaning towards games that offer unique twists on the Souls formula, that offer, I'm not afraid to say it, and even a fun twist on the Souls formula. And that's why I've got to say I've been really impressed by the Mortal Shell 2 and Valor Mortis demos that were released last week. Games that seem willing and are not ashamed to challenge the standard Souls formula without worshipping it to a fault. Both of these games have really piqued my interest, one more than the other for sure, but I've got to say both of them are impressive pieces of work. And if you are suffering from Souls fatigue and just kind of shy away from a Souls game, try both of these demos. You will be pleasantly surprised. Okay, let's talk about Valor Mortis first. So the demo of Valor Mortis really paints it as a first-person Souls-like, but I feel that a better description of it, which I think you can argue Lies of P is also a Souls-like, but this is a first-person Lies of P. It's a heavy focus on parrying, Napoleonic war horror, which also has echoes of the Lies of P enemy design and resource management, morphs it into something very, very interesting. There are some nitpicks in terms of camera and parrying, which I'll get onto in a minute, but overall it's a very impressive demo. The voice acting off the bat is really good, and it adds to the fantastic atmosphere. The setting here is a big differentiator. Set during an alternate Napoleon era, battlefields are covered in corpses, discarded weapons, smoke, mud, mutated soldiers. It leans heavily into that aesthetic actually, rather than the medieval tones of, let's say, a classic Dark Souls game. And I'd say, because of the voice acting, and because of the setting and how unique it is, it's definitely the game's strongest quality that sets it apart from your standard Souls game. And for the most part, the first-person Souls combat works. It revolves around a sword, pistol, as well as some supernatural abilities which you can scroll through with your mouse wheel. You can only have the gun or magic equipped at any one time, so you have to rotate between them both. The pistol isn't a core part of the game. It's used to hit weak points, well, in the demo at least. And the fire magic seemingly is used to inflict status effects mostly. The combination of everything actually gives the fights a tactical feeling. There's no just dodge rolling or just parrying. You really do have to use all three of your abilities, your movement abilities, your shooting abilities, your melee abilities, and your magic abilities to try to bring the boss down and to open up the critical blows. And one thing I'm delighted to report is there actually seems to be some really good build variety here. You can spend resources and upgrades. You can pick up gems, I think is the best way to describe them, which have their own unique effects on them. It can be, blood drain or health drain, extra crit damage, etc, etc, and you have slots for these things. Then you have your standard stuff like extra healing from flask, etc. I do have some criticisms. First of all, the first person camera sometimes when it comes to larger or certain enemy animations, you don't see those attacks coming. They can kind of hit you in your blind spot, and that can be very annoying when a hit can do so much damage to you. I also have to say, I'm not a huge fan of a core mechanic just being bright, glowing, weak spots and you shoot them. It's very Suicide Squad, and it is a bit of a turn off if I'm honest with you. I feel like they could do a bit better than that, but I don't think they're going to change it at this point. And this just may be a get good kind of situation, but I thought the parry animation was a touch too slow, like 10 to 20% too slow, but maybe it's just my taste. But yeah, that parry animation, the parry being such a core part of the game, I don't know. It was something just felt slightly, ever so slightly off, and in these games that can be really important. But overall, I think Valor Mortis is doing a great job of differentiating it from your standard Souls game, and as a result, I think it will attract a lot of players to it. It replaces the familiar third-person tropes of Souls games with first-person immersion, weak point shooting, which I don't like, but I can see for some people it'll be something different, resource-driven magic, Napoleonic horror, and some really good experimental builds and trade-offs with those builds, as some of them have negative and positive effects. Tie all that in with a first-person perspective and you do have a unique twist on it. So it isn't really abandoning the Souls formula, it is neatly evolving it. And yes, the game is still very difficult. Just one thing I forgot to mention, they do have a dodge here that kind of slows down time when you dodge the enemy. It wasn't quite clear in the demo how you get the extra damage from dodging. So it does say if you dodge, it opens up some like double damage options or something. Well, yeah, overall, I really enjoyed Valor Mortis. I actually thought I would enjoy it more though, if I'm being totally honest. As someone who's really keen on the core gameplay mechanics of the game being 100% perfect, I did feel the dodge and parry were just slightly missing the mark for me. That's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Anyway, let's move on to Mortal Shell 2. Okay, so Mortal Shell 2 is brilliant. I have really enjoyed this. I thought I would hate it. I thought it looked too Soulsy for me. And as I said to you, I am tired of Souls games, but this does a lot of things very, very well. And it does one core thing. And if you've played a lot of Souls games, this is going to put you off or pull you in. And that is, they have removed the stamina bar from your character in Mortal Shell 2. And what that means is this is a much more aggressive, much more ARPG Souls-like game than any other Souls-like game. And there's going to be purists who say this isn't a Souls-like game just because it doesn't have the stamina bar and there's no stamina management. What they've done is that in terms of your actions, it doesn't really play too much like a Souls-like because there's no stamina. Yes, you can have methodical attacks, you can have a heavy weapon that attacks slowly, a faster weapon, but you have so many strings in your bow in Mortal Shell that it really, you do feel like kind of like a Swiss Army knife of many other Souls games, but with no stamina management. And that feels, for me, that feels great. On the flip side, everything about how you receive damage is very Souls-like. Like, you'll die in like 3 hits. You have limited healing. There's big gaps between different kind of checkpoints where you can heal, and the enemies hit hard. You meet groups of enemies, and that's kind of the way I think they're balancing the lack of stamina. They give you a lot of enemies to deal with at any one time, and there's a lot of build crafting. There's, I don't know the exact names, the correct terms for what they are, but there's many different things you can slot into your character, which give you extra skills such as being able to harden yourself, being able to perfect parry, being able to dodge through enemies and stagger them. There's all kinds of things that you can do, which is all tied into your shell, of which there's many, which is all tied into your mods, of which there's many, which is tied into like other skills you can put into slots, which let you empower your weapons, of which there's many. There's parries, there's perfect hardens, there's perfect parries, there's shotguns, there's firearms tied into doing extra damage. Some are weaker to firearms, some are less weak to firearms. There's the ability to have constant offense. Quite frankly, this is a Souls-like that feels faster and more expressive and less about patience and monotony. The guns here are not a gimmick. They are there to create openings, to break posture, to finish combos, and force you to take tactical decisions depending on enemy type. Now, in the demo, you can't explore ranged weapons that much, or at least I couldn't, or I didn't, but the potential is clearly there, and I love the kill animations. Though they do get a bit repetitive, I do wish that the same weapon would have multiple kill animations, which hopefully in the final game it does, but it does seem to be dependent on the enemy. Now, I've read conflicting reports on the open worldiness of Mortal Shell 2. It seems like there's an interconnected world where it's very dense, and though it can technically be seen as an open world, I think it's a very compact open world. There's over 60 dungeons scattered throughout the world. I don't know if that includes the dungeons you see at the beacons, but those beacon dungeons are very, very simple. They're very basic, at least the ones in the demo are. There's a heavy emphasis on exploration, just in terms of getting resources to upgrade weapons and skills or find unique skills. And normally in a Souls game, I'm not too keen on that because, again, as I said, I'm a bit tired of them. But due to the expression, due to the lack of stamina management, due to the aggression in combat, I think I'd be way more willing to do that here in Mortal Shell 2. And what I love most of all about Mortal Shell 2 is the possibilities when it comes to builds and build expression. You have so many different weapons, you have shells, you have skills, you have gems to slot into your weapons. There seems to be a lot of possibilities, a lot of abilities, a lot of upgrades, a lot of build crafting. I mean, you could upgrade each and every shell, and there's unique effects in 3 different trees, at least in the demo, and I'm sure there's going to be more in the main game. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. My main criticism is that it feels like sometimes when you hit the enemy, there's not a lot of weight to that combat. I want to feel that sword hit the monsters, and I didn't quite get that, especially with the axe, which you can kind of find in the demo later on. Yeah, it just feels very soft. It feels very spaghetti hoopy. Graphically, it looks stunning. The lighting is gorgeous. I think narratively, it's going to be your standard fare when it comes to Souls games, you know, kind of speaking in tongues and whatnot, in riddles, which, to be honest, I'm just so used to it by now. It doesn't really bother me at all. But for me, the aggression on the combat, the expression on the combat, the build crafting and build variety, the shell variety, the skills that come with the shells, all of that makes this a day one purchase for me. And I cannot believe I'm saying that because I am bloody sick of Souls games. All right, take care. Bye.